Lieutenant Maya Chen stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel, watching as the massive Velridian mothership came into view. The alien craft dwarfed their own, its crystalline surface catching the light of nearby stars and breaking it into rainbows. Maya took a deep breath, straightening her formal uniform. As Earth's first diplomat to the Velridian Confederation, everything depended on her. "We're being hailed," announced Captain Torres from behind her. "They're ready to receive you." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of 7 billion humans resting on her shoulders. Earth had only discovered faster-than-light travel 3 years ago, shocking the galactic community with their sudden appearance. Most alien species had taken thousands of years to develop the same technology. "Remember the briefing," Torres said quietly. "The Velridians value logic and composure above all. No emotional displays." The shuttle ride to the Confederation flagship was silent and tense. Maya reviewed her notes one last time. Though she had memorized every detail about Velridian culture, they were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, with technology centuries beyond human understanding, and they were not known for their patience with emerging species. When the shuttle doors opened, Maya was greeted by a delegation of tall, blue-skinned aliens. Their 7 eyes blinked in unison as they observed her. "Lieutenant Maya Chen of Earth," announced her escort, "here to petition for Earth's inclusion in the Confederation." The lead Velridian stepped forward. "I am High Counselor Zextier. Follow me to the council chambers." The Velridian ship was a marvel of engineering. Hallways shifted and rearranged themselves as they walked, adapting to the most efficient path. Other alien species passed by, some with forms so strange Maya could barely comprehend them. All gave her curious or dismissive glances. The council chamber was a vast circular room with seats arranged in rising tiers. Representatives from dozens of alien civilizations filled the seats, murmuring as Maya entered. She was directed to stand in the center of the room, alone, while Zextier took his position at the highest tier. "The Council recognizes Earth's petition for observer status in the Confederation," Zextier began. "Lieutenant Chen will present her case." Maya activated her translator and began her carefully prepared speech about Earth's history, achievements, and potential contributions to the galactic community. She was only halfway through when a Velridian ambassador rose from his seat, interrupting her. "This is a waste of our valuable time," he said, his 6-fingered hand slamming on the table before him. "These humans are barely evolved primates. They discovered nuclear fission less than 3 centuries ago and still fight wars among themselves. They have no place in our Confederation." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Maya felt her heart pound, but kept her face carefully neutral. "The ambassador makes a valid point," said another alien representative. "Their technology is primitive at best. What could they possibly offer us?" The room grew louder with dismissive comments. Maya stood alone, the only human in a room of beings who had mastered the stars when her ancestors were still fighting with swords. Everything, Earth's future, humanity's standing, depended on what she did next. "Perhaps," Maya said softly, her voice somehow cutting through the noise and drawing every eye in the room. "That is precisely why you need us." The chamber fell silent. Maya activated her wrist device, projecting a hologram in the center of the room. It showed a pattern in spatial anomalies that Earth's astronomers had detected, something the advanced aliens had somehow missed. "Our scientists noticed this pattern in what you call the Veil Nebula region. We believe it indicates artificial manipulation of spacetime, possibly a cloaking technology." The Velridian ambassador scoffed. "Impossible. Our sensors have monitored that region for centuries." "Yes," Maya agreed, "but sometimes, Ambassador, primitive eyes see what sophisticated algorithms miss. Your systems are programmed to detect known patterns. Humans still rely on intuition and creative thinking, qualities your own historical records suggest diminish with technological advancement." She expanded the hologram, showing more details of the anomaly. "We may be primitive by your standards, but perhaps that gives us a different perspective, one the Confederation might find valuable." The High Counselor leaned forward, his seven eyes narrowing. Interesting. This would explain several unexplained phenomena in that sector. Earth doesn't ask to join as an equal, Maya continued. We ask for observer status, to learn from you. But perhaps in our own small way, we might contribute something as well. The room was quiet now, the earlier dismissal replaced with thoughtful consideration. Even the hostile ambassador seemed to be reassessing her. A different perspective, Zextier said slowly. Perhaps there is merit in diversity of thought after all. He gestured to his fellow council members. We will deliberate on Earth's petition. Lieutenant Chen, you have given us much to consider. As Maya was escorted from the chamber, she caught the eye of a younger Velridian scientist who looked at her with something approaching respect. She didn't know it yet, but she had just made both a powerful ally and a dangerous enemy, and the fate of two civilizations would hang in the balance. 6 months had passed since Earth gained observer status in the Velridian Confederation. Lieutenant Maya Chen now worked from a small office in the massive space station that served as the Confederation's diplomatic hub. Though humans were officially recognized, most alien species still treated them with barely concealed dismissal. Maya stared at her computer terminal, scrolling through reports that had been declassified for Earth's observers. Most were heavily edited, with large sections blacked out. Still, she had developed a knack for reading between the lines, finding patterns in what wasn't being said. The door to her office slid open without announcement. Maya didn't need to look up to know who it was. Only one person visited her regularly. Working late again, Lieutenant? Kazov asked, his 7 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of curiosity among Velridians. Just reviewing the Border Patrol reports, Maya replied, gesturing to the screen. Zoth was a junior scientist in the Confederation's research division, and one of the few aliens who seemed genuinely interested in humans. He had sought Maya out after her presentation to the Council, fascinated by Earth's primitive but creative approach to data analysis. Those reports are quite dull, Kizoth said, settling his lanky blue frame into a chair designed for a different species entirely. Nothing but routine scans and minor smuggling incidents. Maya turned her screen toward him. Look at these energy readings from the outer rim. They've appeared in 6 different reports over the last month. Kizoth leaned forward. Standard radiation spikes, likely just solar flares from the twin stars in that sector. That's what the reports conclude, Maya agreed. But the pattern is too regular. Solar flares don't pulse at exact 47-minute intervals. She pulled up another screen showing a star chart. And look, each reading comes from a slightly different location, forming a straight line moving toward Confederation space. Kizoth's skin paled slightly, the Velridian equivalent of a frown. That could be coincidence. Maya shook her head. I don't think so. Something's out there, moving deliberately and trying to stay hidden. Kizoth straightened up. You shouldn't have access to this level of data. These reports are from multiple secured channels. Your security has gaps, Maya said simply. And I'm good at finding patterns. It's what humans do. She pulled up one more file, this one clearly marked with high-level classification symbols. Kizoth's eyes widened. That's from the historical archives. How did you? Does it matter? Maya interrupted. Look at the energy signature comparison. On the screen, the mysterious pulses from the recent reports overlapped perfectly with an ancient recording. The file header read, Void Harbinger incursion -781 standard years ago. The Void Harbingers are a myth, Kizoth said, but his voice lacked conviction. Stories to frighten young ones about the dark days before the Confederation. Maya pointed to the date stamps. These aren't stories. These are actual sensor readings from an attack that destroyed 3 Confederation worlds. Kizoth's fingers tapped nervously on the desk. If you're right, and I'm not saying you are, why hasn't anyone else noticed this? Because no one's looking, Maya said. Your systems are programmed to flag known threats, but whoever classified these original Harbinger records ensured they weren't included in standard threat assessment algorithms. That makes no sense. Why would anyone hide this information? Maya closed the files and looked directly at Kizoth. That's what I need your help to find out. Kizoth moved toward the door, suddenly uncomfortable. Lieutenant Chen, I respect your creativity, but these accusations are serious. The Void Harbingers are ancient history, if they existed at all. Then why did someone classify this information? Maya challenged, pushing the data toward him. Something's coming, Kizoth, and your people are too proud to see it. Kizoth hesitated at the door. I need to think about this. After he left, Maya turned back to her screen. A new alert had appeared. Another energy pulse, closer than before. She quickly calculated its trajectory and felt her blood turn cold. At its current speed, whatever was causing those pulses would reach inhabited Confederation space in less than 2 weeks. She sent a message to the human embassy, encrypted with Earth's own codes. Then she prepared a formal warning for the Confederation Council, knowing they would likely ignore it. As she worked, she kept thinking about the ancient records, about entire planets falling silent in a single day. History, it seemed, was about to repeat itself, and only a primitive human had noticed. The emergency alarms blared through the Confederation headquarters, their piercing wail cutting through the usual calm efficiency of the station. Maya ran down the crowded corridor, pushing past panicking officials of various species. The station's lighting had shifted to emergency red, casting everything in a bloody glow. 2 weeks had passed since she'd sent her warning to the Confederation Council. They had dismissed her concerns as primitive human paranoia and misinterpretation of standard data. Now, they were paying the price for their arrogance. Lieutenant Chen. A voice called out behind her. Maya turned to see Kizoth racing to catch up, his blue skin paler than she'd ever seen it. 3 colony worlds have gone dark in the last 6 hours. No communication, no emergency beacons, nothing. Which worlds? Maya asked, already dreading the answer. Nexus 7, Terrell and Ventrix Station. All along the exact trajectory you predicted. Maya felt no satisfaction in being right. Those 3 outposts had a combined population of over 12 million beings. Has the Council finally acknowledged the threat? They've called an emergency session. They want you there. The Council chamber was chaos, a stark contrast to the rigid order Maya had witnessed during her first appearance. Representatives from dozens of species argued loudly, some demanding military action, others calling for evacuation of nearby systems. The Velridian High Counselor, Zex Tyr, stood at the center, trying to restore order. When Maya entered with Kizoth, the room gradually fell silent. All eyes, some sets numbering more than a dozen, turned toward her. Lieutenant Chen. Zex Tyr's voice echoed through the chamber. 6 standard cycles ago, you submitted a report warning of a possible incursion by an entity matching historical descriptions of the Void Harbingers. That report was regrettably dismissed. Maya recognized the political speech for what it was, as close to an apology as a Velridian would ever offer. What's the current situation, High Counselor? A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing a map of Confederation space. 3 systems glowed red. All communication with these colonies has ceased, Zex Tyr explained. Our defense fleet arrived at Nexus 7 30 minutes ago and found the planet intact but empty. No life signs, no technology functioning. Everything organic or electronic simply gone. A senior military commander stepped forward, his exoskeleton clicking nervously. We've deployed our automated defense systems at choke points between the affected areas and the core worlds. But we're getting strange readings. As if on cue, the holographic display flickered, then showed new alerts. 2 more systems flashed warning signals. That's impossible, the commander shouted. Those systems are protected by our most advanced AI defense networks. The defense grid is failing. A technician called from a monitoring station. Our AI systems are being corrupted somehow. They're shutting down or turning against our own ships. Maya stepped forward, studying the display. The pattern of the attack was clear now, and terrifyingly familiar from the historical records she'd studied. "Your systems were built to fight technology," she said loudly, drawing the attention of the panicking council. "The Harbingers use organic tech, living ships. That's why your defenses fail." "Explain," demanded Zextier. "Your defensive AIs are programmed to recognize ships, weapons, technological patterns. But the Harbingers don't use technology as we understand it. Their ships are alive, composed of engineered biological material that can adapt and evolve. Your systems can't recognize them as threats until it's too late." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Confederation's technological superiority, the very foundation of their power, was useless against this enemy. "The historical records showed the same pattern," Maya continued. "The Harbingers were eventually driven back, but not by advanced technology. They were defeated by species you would consider primitive, those still using physical weapons, manual controls, and non-AI combat strategies. The Supreme Chancellor of the Confederation, a rarely seen figure of immense authority, stepped forward from the shadows where he had been observing. His ancient face, bearing the marks of a species far older than even the Velridians, turned toward Maya. "What would you suggest, Lieutenant Chen?" he asked, his voice heavy with the desperation that had replaced months of dismissal. Maya looked around the room, at the representatives of species that had called humans primitive, backward, barely evolved. Now they looked to her with desperate hope. She took a deep breath. "Let us humans show you how we fought wars before computers did it for us." The massive shadow of the Harbinger mothership loomed above them as Maya led her small team through the twisted biological corridors. The walls pulsed with an eerie blue light and occasionally shifted position like living tissue. The air smelled wrong, not alien, but somehow empty, as if the very molecules had been stripped of something essential. "This place feels alive," whispered Commander Rodriguez, one of the 3 human soldiers accompanying Maya on this desperate mission. "Because it is," Maya replied, checking the old-fashioned compass in her hand. "Remember the briefing. The ship isn't just carrying life forms, it is a life form." Behind them walked Kazoth and 2 other aliens, a reptilian sword engineer and a gaseous vent communication specialist, contained in a protective suit. They carried the technological package that was their last hope against the Harbinger invasion. If they could reach the central node of the mothership, they might be able to introduce a virus that would disrupt the Harbinger's hive mind. "I still don't understand why your primitive navigation device works when our quantum positioning systems failed," Kazoth said, eyeing Maya's compass. "Simple physics," Maya explained, keeping her voice low. "Magnetic fields are fundamental forces. The Harbingers can disrupt complex technology, but they can't change basic physical laws." Their mission had been a desperate gamble from the start. With Confederation defenses falling and 6 more worlds gone silent, the Supreme Chancellor had approved Maya's plan. A small, mixed team would infiltrate the mothership using technology so simple it was beneath the Harbinger's notice. "Junction ahead," Rodriguez warned, raising his rifle, an actual projectile weapon with physical bullets, considered a museum piece by Confederation standards. The corridor widened into a chamber where several passages met. As they entered, the walls suddenly pulsed bright red. A high-pitched tone reverberated through the chamber. "They've detected us," the sword engineer hissed, his scales flattening in alarm. "Our energy signatures," Kazoth realized, looking at the advanced scanner he carried. "The device is." Before he could finish, the scanner exploded in his hands, sending him staggering backward. Along the walls, openings appeared like dozens of mouths, and from them emerged Harbinger drones, floating, jellyfish-like creatures with glowing appendages and sharp crystalline cores. "Take cover," Maya shouted, pulling Kazoth behind a ridge in the floor as the creatures began emitting beams of energy that melted through anything they touched. Rodriguez and the other humans opened fire, The primitive bullets tore through the Harbinger drones, sending them spinning in confusion. But there were too many, and the team was forced to retreat down one of the corridors. The package. The Venth communications specialist gurgled through his translator. It's been damaged. Maya looked at the smoking device that was supposed to save the Confederation. A direct hit from a Harbinger beam had melted half of its components. Can you fix it? She asked the Saurid. Impossible, he replied, his clawed hands inspecting the damage. The quantum matrix is completely destroyed. More Harbinger drones appeared at the end of the corridor. Rodriguez and the other human soldiers continued firing, but they were running low on ammunition. The Venth attempt to use his communication device to disrupt the drones, but it suddenly sparked and went dead. All our advanced tech is failing, Kizoth said, his voice shaking with fear that no Velridian would normally display. We cannot defeat them. Their hive mind anticipates every logical move. The drones were closing in from both directions now. The Saurid engineer fell, a Harbinger beam burning through his protective suit. The second human soldier dragged him behind cover, but it was clear they were trapped. Maya checked her pistol. 6 bullets left. She looked at her remaining team members, their faces illuminated by the pulsing light of the living ship. Her mind raced through options, discarding each one as quickly as they formed. By all logical analysis, they were doomed. Then, strangely, she smiled. What could possibly be amusing at this moment? Kizoth asked incredulously. You said it yourself, Maya replied, pulling a combat knife from her boot. They anticipate every logical move. She handed the knife to Rodriguez, who immediately understood her plan. Then will be illogical. Maya turned to Kizoth, the alien who had once dismissed her entire species as primitive. She offered her hand to him. Humans have survived for thousands of years by doing what makes no sense, she said. Trust me. Kizoth hesitated only for a moment before taking her hand. I trust you. Maya nodded to Rodriguez, who began slicing through his own uniform with the knife, creating strips of fabric. Good. Now here's what we're going to do. The great chamber of the Confederation Council had never been so full. Representatives from over 300 species crowded the tiered seats, all eyes fixed on the small human figure at the center. Maya Chen stood straight despite the pain of her injuries, her uniform replaced with a simple medical gown, her arm in a regenerative cast. The bandages across her face couldn't hide the determination in her eyes. Beside her stood Kizoth, who hadn't left her side since their escape from the Harbinger mothership. His formal Velridian robes couldn't hide the new scars on his blue skin, marks he now wore with unexpected pride. The Supreme Chancellor rose from his seat, the ancient being's movements slow but deliberate. Silence fell across the chamber. 1 standard month ago, he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. We faced extinction. The Void Harbingers had destroyed 11 worlds and showed no signs of stopping. Our most advanced defenses failed. Our greatest minds could find no solution. He gestured toward Maya. Then Lieutenant Maya Chen of Earth, a species many dismissed as primitive, led a mission that changed everything. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Everyone had heard the story by now. How a small team had infiltrated the Harbinger mothership, how their technology had failed, and how they had improvised a plan so unexpected that it had shattered the Harbinger's defenses. Lieutenant Chen, please share with the full council what you discovered, the Chancellor requested. Maya took a step forward, her voice clear despite her injuries. The Harbingers retreated not because of superior firepower, she explained, but because we showed them something they couldn't comprehend. Sacrifice, empathy, love. Their hive mind literally cannot process these concepts. She activated a simple hologram showing the biological structure of a Harbinger drone. Their entire species functions as a single organism. Individual drones have no concept of self-sacrifice because they don't recognize themselves as individuals. They're simply extensions of the whole. Images appeared showing the desperate battle aboard the mothership, how Rodriguez had used himself as bait, drawing dozens of drones into a trap while suffering terrible injuries, how the Venth communications specialist had released his gaseous form into the ship's ventilation system, knowing he could never be recollected. How Maya herself had carried the wounded Kazoth through burning corridors when all logic said to leave him behind. When we reached the central chamber, Maya continued, we faced the Harbinger Queen. She tried to understand our actions, why one being would risk death for another with no biological connection. This confusion disrupted the hive mind just long enough for us to establish communication. Kazoth stepped forward. Lieutenant Chen willingly faced death to save my life, an action without logical benefit to her species or herself. This, humanity, is what saved us all. He activated another hologram, showing the device they had ultimately used to communicate with the Harbingers. It was embarrassingly simple by Confederation standards, essentially a translation algorithm running on a hand-cranked generator. The Harbingers weren't invading, Maya explained. They were fleeing something worse, consuming worlds in their path for survival. When we showed them we could cooperate, that different species could work together while maintaining their individuality, it offered them an alternative they had never considered. The Supreme Chancellor nodded. Based on Lieutenant Chen's negotiations, the Harbingers have withdrawn to uninhabited systems we have provided. Research teams are now working with them to find sustainable alternatives to their consumption of populated worlds. He turned to face the entire assembly. We called humans primitive because they still experience emotions we evolved beyond. We were wrong. Their humanity was the very thing we needed most. The Chancellor approached Maya, carrying a small crystal emblem, the highest honor the Confederation could bestow. Earth is hereby granted full membership in the Velridian Confederation, he announced, and Lieutenant Maya Chen will lead a new division focused on cooperative defense and diplomatic solutions to existential threats. As the chamber erupted in applause, Maya looked out at the sea of alien faces, beings from worlds she had never imagined, with biologies and psychologies vastly different from her own. Yet in this moment, they were united by something profoundly simple. "Thank you, Chancellor," she said, accepting the emblem. "I'm honored to serve, but I want everyone to understand something important." The room quieted again. What saved us wasn't just human ingenuity or Earth tactics. It was something all thinking beings can share, if they choose to. Maya looked across the faces of 100 alien species. Perhaps being human isn't about where we are in evolution, but about what we carry in our hearts. And that gift belongs to all of us. As she finished speaking, Kazoth placed a 6-fingered hand on her shoulder, a gesture of respect that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Around the chamber, representatives of ancient, advanced civilizations nodded in understanding. The universe had just become a much more interesting place.